UFC Fight Night Vegas 72, Song versus Simone takes place this weekend, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card. Let's start straight away with the early prelim opener of Hailey Cowan versus Jamie-lyn Horth. I'm going to not use the coin this time. It let me down last time, so I'm now no longer using the coin. I'll only bring it out in desperate times of need. I am going to side with Jamie-lyn Horth. I don't want to flip a coin and have it make me pick Hailey Cowan, even though I disagree with that pick completely. So I'm going with Jamie-lyn Horth. I think she's going to win this fight. There's not really normally much to look at in a women's regional career. She is undefeated, 5-0, beat a 9-3 opponent, a 3-1 opponent as well. But when you look into her amateur career, you know, she started her MMA career 7 years ago where she was fighting an amateur. She beat Lupita Godinez twice, which is impressive, you know what I mean? Because Lupita Godinez had credentials going into her MMA career. She then beat Shauna Ram, who was 4-0 at amateur, before eventually turning pro. And Shauna Ram, although a bit older, beat like a Sam Hughes when she was fighting on the amateur scene. And Sam Hughes has good wrestling as well, so I feel like I'm going to side with Jamie-lyn Horth here over Hailey Cowan, who, let's be honest, hasn't really done too much herself. Like, I know we can say that about most women fighters coming into the UFC, but she's 7-2. Last went to a split decision on the Contender Series. Didn't look the best, in all honesty. Didn't look the best whatsoever. Lost to a 1-2 opponent 2 years before that. Let's be real. If she wasn't minorly attractive, she wouldn't be getting a shot in the UFC. I'm going to have to side with Jamie-lyn Horth here. Uglier, more to be angry about. She'll get this job done by decision 29-28. We move on. Up the card, Brian Kelleher versus Journey Newson. I'm going to side with Journey Newson to win this one. I'm worried about Brian Kelleher's long career of 14 losses. You know what I mean? Journey Newson is also no spring chicken, 34 years of age, even though he looks very young for his age, in all honesty. He's 34. You know what I mean? He hasn't had the best of results in the UFC so far. Lost to Sergey Morozov in a competitive fight where he got out-grappled, and he didn't really get dominated on the ground, but he was just being held down in certain positions, working his way back up, and then getting held down again after stuffing a few takedowns before that. So I don't think there's a hole in his game. And I think the way Kelleher normally wins is he shows someone a hole in their game that they didn't know was there, like against Domingo Pilate and Kevin Kroom. He sort of like figures these guys out. They're a little bit too predictable. I think Journey Newson is kind of underrated in a way. His record doesn't really say how somewhat talented he could be, and maybe is. He's very fast. He's got knockout power. I think if anyone's going to get a finish here, it's going to be Journey Newson. And also, you've got to consider Brian Kelleher is 36. He's 24-14. He's been doing this since 2008. He went amateur in 2008, so he's been doing this for a very long time. So has Journey Newson, but like Kelleher's picked up some miles. You know what I mean? He's lost some fights here and there, and he got chinned. Of course, the famous one was by John Lineker, and he got finished by Marlon Vera pretty easily. He got finished by Montel Jackson. And he's had his scraps by decision a lot over the years as well. I mean, he was getting busted up by Hunter Azure before landing that left hand. He's good, but his recent wins, Domingo Pilate, Kevin Kroom, Journey Newson, despite failing for weed on that fight, flattened Domingo Pilate in the first round. And Kelleher took him to a decision. I think the finishing potential's on the side of Journey Newson. I think the lack of miles on the fighter is on the side of Journey Newson as well. Plus, he's still got to make his money. Kelleher's made some money. I do root for him. I do like Kelleher, but I'm going to go the underdog of Journey Newson here. Seems like a fight that should be evens at this point, to be honest with you. And Kelleher just got dominated twice. When you're an older fighter and you get dominated, absolutely dismantled, I know it's Umar Nurmagomedov. I know it's Mario Batista as well. But when you get absolutely dominated as an older fighter and have no chance in the fight whatsoever, it's demoralizing. And he's had some time off since then. I'm going to side with Journey Newson. You know what I mean? Kelleher hasn't been in there in 10 months. Newson's turning back around after a fight in December. I'm siding with him. We move on. Stephenie versus Irina Alekseeva. I'm going to go with Stephenie winning this fight. I think she'll win this one using her grappling. There is a threat of an armbar. I'll be honest with you with this Irina Alekseeva girl. However, is there really? She's had one armbar, and she calls herself the Russian Ronda. Okay? And another one of these cases of, let's be real, She's reasonably attractive, so she's in the UFC. She's 1-1 in her last 2, lost to an 8-6 opponent on the regional scene by decision. I think Stephenie Egger's got really good grappling, and if there's one thing you're going to learn how to do after being armbarred by Mayra Bueno Silva, is start watching out for those armbars. And then she came back against Ailin Perez, who was 7-1 at the time, and actually a pretty good prospect, and she beat her pretty easily by rear naked choke in the second round. So I'm definitely going to side with Stephenie Egger. She's no joke. She's got a judoka background, I believe. A judo background. I think she's going to get this one done. I think she gets this one done. I think she uses her grappling and wins over a woman who probably wouldn't be in the UFC if she didn't look good, and calls herself a Ronda Rousey of Russia with one armbar to her name. So, very interesting. We move on. Up the card. Josh Quinlan versus Trey Waters. I'm going to go with Josh Quinlan. Trey Waters, he's just had a viral KO. I watched it live at LFA. He took damage, and he was losing that fight, though. And that fight was a couple of weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, that fight was. I know he's like, oh my God, I've been given an opportunity in the UFC. I have to say yes. And he was on the Contender Series. And you know the UFC likes to look out for people who are on the Contender Series. He got dealt a bad card on the Contender Series, let's be real. He got given Gabriel Bonfirm, who's an absolute beast. You know what I mean? And will go on like Ishmael Bonfirm and be a great fighter. But, you know, the guy he was fighting was 7-2, now 7-3. And he was doing really well in that fight. And it's not like it was one-way traffic and he scored a KO. He took some shots. I don't know if he's going to be all okay to take on a fresh Josh Quinlan, who was supposed to be fighting Onge Looser on this card, and is locked in and ready to go, and is coming off a KO win over Jason Witt in the first round. I'm going to side with Josh Quinlan getting a TKO, to be honest with you. I think I'm going to go with him early, getting this win. I don't know how the Trey Waters is going to deal with back-to-back weight cuts. I just don't like this fight for him. I think he's talented, but this is bad circumstances, and I think Quinlan will win by KO. We'll move on. Up the card, Cody Durden versus Charles Johnson. I'm going to go with Charles Johnson winning this fight. I think he'll win this one by decision. Cody Durden is good, but there's one thing that he lacks in his game, and it's somewhat dominance in certain positions. He gets finished now and again. Finished by Jimmy Flick after looking good in that fight. Finished by Makayev. He does have a good pace, but he's kind of like a worse Covington at flyweight, where he doesn't quite have the ability to finish anyone on the feet, much like Covington. But he did beat JP Bays, to be fair, but who hasn't? Let's be real. Even Cheyenne was finishing relationships with him. I'll move on. But either way, some of his fights, like against Carlos Mota and Aori Chwileng, it's just like he's not really doing anything. He's just pushing a pace and making them defend takedowns, and sometimes they are defending them, sometimes they're not. It's not like he's getting into a dominant position on top and beating them up. And I think if there's someone that can deal with that, it's Charles Johnson, because we saw him so easily deal with Mohamed Makayev's takedowns. Now, Makayev won the fight using those takedowns, but Charles Johnson was stuffing like every single one, and even if he was getting taken down, he was getting right back up, and I think he's definitely going to be able to do that to Cody Durden. And if he is on the feet with Durden and Durden's really struggling and not getting any of the takedowns or not keeping any control from them, we could see him to start to slow down. Aori Chwileng should not be having a good third round against you. He's an explosive guy. You know what I mean? And that was a bit worrying to see. So I'm definitely going to side with Charles Johnson, stuffing some of those takedowns. He should be on a 3-fight win streak right now since the Makayev loss, which was a close decision anyway, but he got out-grappled here and there. The Zalgas loss should be there, to be fair. Actually, now I think about it. But he beat Jimmy Flick, dominated him. He beat O'Day Osborne, got robbed. What goes around comes around. You robbed Zamagulov. It's a small world. I'm going to go with him to beat Cody Durden by 29-28 decision based on the second and third round. We move on up the card. Natan Levy versus Pete Rodriguez. Damn. I'm torn on this. I'm actually torn on this. Because I think Natan Levy has a very interesting style, but I don't mind Pete Rodriguez's hands. I really don't mind his hands in this fight. And I feel like I'll hate myself if I don't pick him to win. Man, I'm worried. He's only lost to Jack Della Maddalena and making his debut after being 4-0 against him. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a bad loss to have, and he smoked Mike Jackson, but it's Mike Jackson. He's awful. He's got momentum, though. And Natan Levy, like, he has had some decent wins. He lost to Rafa Garcia, but I didn't think he was going to beat Genaro Valdez, I'll be honest with you. I thought Genaro Valdez was going to be able to do some really good work against him, but Genaro Valdez was coming off that brutal loss, and man, I'm going to hurt myself if I don't take this. I'm going to go with Pete Rodriguez by KO. I'm going to go with Pete Rodriguez getting himself a KO win. Heavy hands, dangerous fighter, 26, training at the MMA lab. I'm actually going to side with another underdog here of Pete Rodriguez. I'm going to risk it again. It's a good underdog, a really big underdog. I just think Natan Levy has some holes in his game when he's striking at times. Like, he's a bit goofy and throws some wild kicks and stuff like that could be confusing to a guy like Pete Rodriguez. I get it, but man, I think he's going to catch him on the chin. I can see it. In the boxing exchanges, I don't like Natan Levy's boxing. So I'm actually, going to side with my man Pete Rodriguez. Let's get it, dude. Dye that hair ginger and you're one of the boys. Pete Rodriguez gets it done by KO in the first round. We move on. Up the card, Martin Buday versus Jake Collier. I'm going to go with Martin Buday just because I think he can push a pace in the clinch that's going to make Jake Collier melt. We saw that against Chris Barnett. We saw Collier melt in that fight pretty badly. He looked good against Andrei Arlovski, though. He did look good against Andrei Arlovski. But I can't pick him to win this one, man. I've got to go Martin Buday. Huge dude. Massive amount of mass on him. Cuts to make the heavyweight limit. I think he's more serious about his career. He's had a long time off since his last fight, which was a robbery. I don't think he should have beaten Lucas Bursky. I think he got outboxed. But I don't see Collier being able to keep up that pace. Bursky should be a light heavyweight now. You know, I mean, Collier was a middleweight, but he's morbidly obese now, so he can't make that. But I'm going to side with him to win this one. I think Collier's lost a bit of a step. I don't know what it was, but there were moments in his career where I was like, oh, he's actually got nice hands. And then in his last fight, I just didn't see that. He landed some good shots on Barnett, but he lost hope, started gassing really quickly in the fight as well. I think he's a bit of a hit and miss fighter, whereas I can trust Buday to be consistently average. So I'm going to trust in the consistently average over than a hit or miss, I think, on this one. I'm going to side with Martin Buday getting this one done. Plus, he's new to the game, way newer to the game than Collier is. He's 31 years of age. He doesn't have any of the miles that Collier has on his body. I'm going to side with Buday getting this one done by 30-27 decision. We move on, up the card to another fight, which is Waldo Cortes-Acosta versus Marcos Rogerio de Lima. This one is interesting to me. Am I really going to go with another underdog here? Or am I going to... I've been really torn on a few fights on this card, and one of them is this one. Because I feel like Waldo Cortes-Acosta, there's got to be a chance to take him down the way he boxes on the front foot, the way he does. You know what I mean? He's a big dude, dangerous dude, staying active, staying busy, young as well, 31, youngish for the division. It's heavyweight, you know what I'm saying? But he's had some close fights with Jared Vandeera, and Jared Vandeera is an abomination to martial arts. And he was able to find holes in Waldo Cortez's game with chopping of the legs, and Marcos Rogerio de Lima is like, you know, ATT, been there for a while. Just beat Arlovski by KO and finished him on the ground afterwards, and went to a decision with Blagoy, which doesn't look too good, but I think I'm going to trust him to win this one. You know, he slept Ben Rothwell, who's not a schmuck, really. You know, I mean, he's had some decent performances in his career. I'm going to side with Marcos Rogerio de Lima. I think he has an athletic ability at heavyweight to either find a finish here more than Waldo Cortes-Acosta can in that first round, but also has an ability to maybe, just maybe, shoot a nice little double leg and just expose a part of Waldo Cortes-Acosta's game. I think he's got more options, and more options means more danger of finishing especially. And I'm going to side with Marcos Rogerio de Lima getting this one done. I don't mind Waldo Cortes-Acosta. I'm not seeing that dominance that Rosenstruik had on the way up, or a Tom Aspinall had on the way up, or a Jailton Almeida had on the way up. I know it was somewhat like heavyweight, but still. I'm not seeing that. And normally when you see a good prospect at heavyweight, they're dominating, they get a big test. I'm not seeing that from him. We move on. I'm going to go with Marcos Rogerio de Lima. Moving on, Julian Erosa versus Padilla. I'm going to side with Julian Erosa. I'm worried that maybe that last KO was one too many because He's been KO'd a few times. You know what I'm saying? Let's just say that. He's been KO'd a few times in his career, okay? He got KO'd on The Ultimate Fighter by Artem Lobov, which was a bad one. He got KO'd by Teruto Ishihara, which is not a good loss to have. Lost to Paddy Pimblett. It was a very close fight. Could have gone either way. Got KO'd by McIntyre. KO'd by Devontae Smith. KO'd by Arce. KO'd by Sungwoo Choi. KO'd by Caceres. But I'm still going to pick him. Fernando Padilla... split decision in his last fight to an 8-2 opponent. I don't think that's too good of a win to get. He's now 10-4, that opponent as well. He has beat some good guys, though. But Fernando Padilla... do I think Fernando Padilla is showing ability more than Charles Jourdain? Because it's those levels of fighters that Erosa beats. You know what I mean? If they're good and talented, but they just aren't experienced or well-rounded enough to handle the trickiness that is Erosa's game and the pressure that is his game, Caceres can do it. But can an up-and-coming Fernando Padilla get through it on his UFC debut at 26 years of age with not much experience whatsoever? He was supposed to fight in October, got injured, so he's coming off that. I'm worried for him. I do want him to win. I don't think the UFC would have signed him if he wasn't Mexican. I think they're looking for Mexican talent right now, and they're signing a lot of them. He's on a 2-fight win streak at regionals after losing before that, so... yeah, I'm going to side with Julian Erosa being able to out-hustle him. You know what I mean? If you're losing a decision to Spike Carlisle, I'm worried. I am kind of worried on that one, that you don't quite have the gas tank. And I think, if I remember correctly, Spike Carlisle took that fight on pretty short notice as well, because he was just fighting non-stop on the regional scene. It was a long time ago. I'm still going to side with Julian Erosa being skilled enough to get this one done by decision. I'm going to side with the masses here. I don't see that great talent from Padilla that other prospects usually show. The ones that even lose to a guy like Erosa. We move on. Cody Brundage versus Rodolfo Vieira. I'm going with Rodolfo Vieira. I think there's two ways to beat Rodolfo Vieira. You've got to expose him on the feet or out-hustle him on the ground. I don't think Brundage has got the cardio to out-hustle him for 3 rounds the way a Anthony Hernandez can. That's the worry that I'm having here. Anthony Hernandez can push such a pace. And we didn't know that before the Rodolfo Vieira fight. But now we do since then. You know what I mean? Rodolfo Vieira was still winning that in the grappling. So he has got good grappling, as he was doing really well. But, you know, Hernandez just escaped a bunch of submissions and kept pushing a pace and kept going and made Rodolfo Vieira squeeze his arms out going for subs that weren't quite in. And he just lost to Chris Curtis. If Chris Curtis can't finish you with all the body shots he landed on you, I don't see Brundage finishing you. Brundage isn't that bad, but he's coming off a brutal KO loss. I think we could see him struggle here. He wants to get it to the ground. He hasn't got the best of stand-up, and Vieira stays safe on the feet-ish with his jab. He's got a nice jab for a middleweight, I'll be honest with you. Brundage is turning around 4 months after getting KO'd. I'm going to side with Rodolfo Vieira. I think as the fight goes on, they'll get iffy on the feet, scrappy on the feet. People will start shooting. And I think maybe Brundage will win the initial grappling exchange. But then as they stay on the ground, I think he's in big danger. So I'm going to go with Rodolfo Vieira by rear naked choke over Cody Brundage. We move on up the card. Caio Borralho versus Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. Caio Borralho versus Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. I'm going to go with Borralho here over Mikhail. Another worrying one, though. Another worrying one, if I'm honest. But I am going to go with Borralho. He didn't look that good against Makhmud Muradov. I'm going to be honest with you. He didn't look that good, and it was worrying as a performance, but he is new. He's new to the game. He took a bit of time off. He's got momentum now. You know, he's on a big win streak. He knows if he wins this one, there's going to be a ranked opponent for him soon. I like the fact that he's been, like, working with... He trains with his own little gym, fighting nerds. That's got to stop. But he's been doing a lot of work at Extreme Couture with, like, other top middleweights like Curtis and Strickland and other top guys like that in the division. I'm going to side with him winning. You know? Mikhail Oleksiejczuk's good. He was able to survive some bad positions against Brundage and end up on top and land those big shots of ground and pound. I think Borralho is a bit of a better scrambler, and he's a lot smarter with his entries as well. But he does leave that chin up. I don't know how much I'm looking to value a win over Alvi. The win over Gamzatov was just outright impressive. But he lost to Modestas Pekauskas. It's the weirdness of these higher weight divisions. It's such a weird division, these top middleweight, light heavyweight. How are you looking good against Shamil Gamzatov and then arguably losing to Modestas Bukauskas? I think Borralho's going to mix it up and make it very frustrating for him. And I think he's going to win a very close 29-28 decision. Maybe getting dropped in one of the rounds is what I'll say. That's what I'll give to Macau. We move on. Up the card. Song Yadong versus Ricky Simón. I'm going with Song Yadong. He's an underdog. Am I really going? He's now evens. Sorry, because some money's come in on him as well. I'm going to go with Song Yadong. Ricky Simón is good. He's very good. And he did just beat Jack Shaw, which is a good win. But I think the athleticism difference in Song Yadong and Jack Shaw is just night and day. You know what I mean? And Jack Shaw, he's good, but he doesn't really have anything too crazy to worry about on the feet the way Song Yadong does. And we've seen like a Uriah Faber get the better of a Ricky Simón. I know that was a long time ago, and he's obviously learned since then, and he looked much better on the feet and really impressively beat Rafael Assunção. Do I think he has the power to finish Song Yadong? I don't. Do not think he has the power to finish Song Yadong. Do I think he has the ability to out-grapple Song Yadong? I don't know about that either. Because Song Yadong has a weirdly explosive ability to get back up to his feet, man. A weirdly explosive ability. And we saw that against Cody Stamann when he was, no joke, I think 20 years of age. Was that 5 years ago against Cody Stamann? No, it was 4 years ago. When he was 21, he showed a weird ability to get back up. You know, and the Sandhagen fight was a mix-up all over the place, and he got cut really early in the fight. I don't see him getting cut here by Simón. I think he's going to beat him. I think he's going to beat Ricky Simón. He looked... I know, like, you know, he arguably should have lost to Marlon Vera, and it was in 2020. Again, when he was, like, 22 years of age. He's now 25. I don't think Simón has too much to mix up on him with, like, head kicks and spinning attacks like a Kyler Phillips can. So I think Song Yadong's going to be able to see a lot of the takedowns coming. And if anyone's getting a finish, I'm going with Song Yadong. So I know he's an underdog, and it is a risky pick. But, man, the amount he's going to improve in between fights, it's scary to think of. He's 25. You know what I mean? I know Simón's been looking really good. But even in his losses, Song Yadong has been looking really good. The Sandhagen fight, I did not think he would keep up that pace with Sandhagen. He did better than Marlon Vera, as I was about to say, after arguably losing, but still beating a Marlon Vera in the first 2 rounds. It was a close fight, but I thought Vera did enough with a couple of pressuring moments towards the end of the rounds. He's improved so much since then, and he showed to me that he's a top 5 bantamweight. I don't know if beating Jack Shaw shows me you're a top 5 bantamweight. So I'm going to go with Song Yadong by KO in the second round after Simón doesn't get his own way with the takedowns, maybe gets hit with a couple of decent shots, starts to regret some things, and then boom, big right hand from Song Yadong. I'm going to go TKO Song Yadong. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle Pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye.